Let's bring in Aneesh Chopra. He is former White House Chief Technology Officer under President Obama. He's now the president of CareJourney. Also, our very own LeBeau joins us for this conversation. He covers the auto sector network. Aneesh, Phil, thank you both for being here. Let's talk about the significance, what this means for the industry. First, Aneesh, because I think what's significant here is the Department of Justice taking a look at potential criminal responsibility. What is this signaling to the industry? Is this a sign that the government is going to start paying attention to how corporate espionage has potentially been changed by the advances we see in technology?
Well, for sure, this is the case. One bit of context, intellectual property is the cornerstone of the economy. Something like a third of all jobs are tied to employers that have strong intellectual property assets. Nearly half of our exports are tied to it. And in this world of digital assets, it's often hard to see what exactly is the asset. Back in the day, criminal justice might have meant if you physically stole a computer, the computer itself had value, even if the software or the information stored on the computer might not have been seen as having value. So we've come a long way now to establishing sort of a legal framework for protecting that intellectual property. I think the main story here is to understand who are the winners and losers in a world where there's now more legal protection, if you will, more enforcement opportunity for companies that hold some form of intellectual property. That puts a little bit of an edge on those that have already built the teams and built the assets, a little bit harder for the startups and the entrepreneurs that are looking to disrupt. Harder for the entrepreneurs and the startups because the implication is that they're all stealing their IT? No. In an area like in California, human capital is the center of this whole industry.
Right.
And obviously a big part of this is there's a ban on non-competes in California. So you can leave company A, join company B, or start company C, and God bless America, you can put your brain power to their highest and best use. The difficulty now is a little bit of the gray area of exactly what were the assets that are these trade secrets, if you will, that a company holds, and how do you demonstrate the line between what's in your head and what might have been an asset that the company previously. Well, you can't print
28,000 documents and take them with you.
Right. Well, a big question in this case is going to be the value of those documents. That's a more detailed question about the case.
Phil, what does this mean for Uber? Because obviously it's a different Uber today than when this all happened. This was Travis Kalanick, and he's the one who's going to be embroiled in some of these things. But it does put Uber in a difficult position.
It does, but also remember that Uber has already settled a lawsuit over this issue involving Lewandowski, the intellectual property that may have been taken, et cetera. They settled that suit. So to a certain extent, while I know that Dee was talking about Travis Kalanick and some of the issues that may come up as this case unfolds, whether it's in court, et cetera, for the most part, Waymo and Uber have settled this. So that's been taken care of. But I do want to point out one thing, Becky. What's interesting, I just went back and I looked at tape that we had back in September of 2016. That's when we were called to Pittsburgh for a demonstration with Uber self-driving vehicles that were being developed there. And there was an interview. We were allowed to talk to Lewandowski at that time. And it was just when these stories were starting to come out about whether or not he had taken some intellectual property, and they were all like, no, that's irrelevant, nothing to do at all. He was, the work on auto, that's the reason that Uber bought that company, and he's the secret sauce. How things have changed in the last 3 years, because it wasn't long after that he was fired by Uber, and then obviously there was that court case.
So, Phil, other companies in the auto industry sitting up and paying attention to this, or is this something that you think is just going to have a much bigger impact on Silicon Valley?
I think it's more Silicon Valley than specific to the auto industry. Look, at the end of the day, this is a trade secret story. This is whether or not employee A, Lewandowski, took these secrets or these documents or schematics for LiDAR, which is crucial to self-driving vehicles, and used it in company B. That's what this is all about. This is not unique because it's self-driving vehicles. That just happens to be the industry where this case unfolded.
Aneesh, what else can we kind of extrapolate in terms of what this means for technology innovation in this country, but also potential government regulation?
Well, so this is the tension that we're going to be seeing. For those economists who believe that we need to put our talent, including human talent, to their highest and best use, this might mean that more people might be stuck in a company that's underinvesting and making the most out of the intellectual property they have. So we might not see as much innovation in the economy. That's one fear. On the other side, this is rightful, legal protection for an organization that is invested to build up an asset. So I think that the legal precedent on what the bar is for what is deemed a trade secret or not may be the most important piece that comes out of this. I will point out, in an area like self-driving cars, it appears to me, I'm not an expert in that field, the software layer is a heck of a lot more important to the success of that program than particularly designing a sensor, sure, which this particular trade secret is about. So for the folks who are looking at the technical implications of this, they're like, well, the real power of this should be in the software teams, and I'm wondering what this sort of hardware innovation does to that. So that's why there's some concern about what the bar will be for what is deemed to be a trade secret on something where the overwhelming share of the value may be in a different part of the innovation chain.
Aneesh, it's difficult to talk about intellectual property theft and all these issues without kind of getting into some of what we talk about every day when it comes to the trade war with China.
Oh, yes.
These are just things we're doing inside the United States, but what's the government doing when you start looking at intellectual property theft that comes from outside our borders?
We need to do more. And this was a priority in the Obama administration. It's clearly a priority for the Trump administration. It is a difficult issue. If you are a graduate student sponsored by a foreign country and you've got to pay back your functional equivalent of student loans, one of the criteria might be that you got to work at companies, maybe collect intellectual property and bring it back home so we can build up our innovation ecosystem. These are serious threats to the American competitiveness position, and I don't want to suggest that there's widespread abuse around these areas, but we definitely need to have more vigilance, more enforcement, and more some negotiated settlement on how we handle protecting intellectual property in the U.S. This is why you're seeing a more beefed up policy process in the U.S. government called CFIUS, which is a boring acronym, but basically limits how much capital comes in from overseas. Right. We just need to figure out a way to protect our assets to continue to thrive in the decades ahead.
Aneesh, thank you for joining us. And Phil, it's great to see you, too.